Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Off the Late Ultimate Hockey Show this week. I'm Michael Joe, joined by Red Petty. Good evening, Red. How are you?
Very good, Michael. How about you?
Very good. Just getting some work projects ironed out. Booking hotels for an announcement that we're going to make in January. Can't wait for that. Had to get the hotel in by the deadline, so knowing that the hotel manager calls me 3 minutes before the show. But anyway, that's the way it goes. We're on today because we're going to have no show next week because of the holidays and the Winnipeg Jets literally only playing tonight's game against the Bruins before we would have another show. So we will be back sometime the week after next week. So we'll recap this for the next hour. Hour here on the Ultimate Hockey Show. As I've already established with Petty, the co-host is on the left. I'm on the right of the screen. I'm on the left. And we're here to talk about all things hockey, which is just chaos week after week. Seemingly. New things to talk about each and every day and each and every week. So we appreciate you making us a part of your evening. That being said, Merry Christmas to everybody. If I forget on the way out, just a little bit of housekeeping as well. Rhett, what do you think of our Winnipeg Jets? Well, they were in first place in the Central Division up until last night. Dallas and Colorado picking up victories to push the Jets. I believe it'll be 1 or 2 points back to first place heading into tonight's game with the big bad Bruins and probably one of the most anticipated matchups, at least from my perspective in Winnipeg in some time as well. We will talk about that and more, but first off, what have you thought of the Winnipeg Jets since we last had a show, which would have been last Monday. So they won a whole bunch of games. That was the back half of that California trip. They lost in San Jose. That would have been the first game post-show, but have been winning since then.
Yeah, I'm just looking here at the schedule. They are 7-2-1 in their last 10, which is about as good as anybody in the league over the last 10 games, I believe. They are right up there. I don't know if there's anybody else that's gotten 15 points in the last 10 games. Some are close. But anyway, remember we talked, I think, on our last show about, the Jets have played well against the teams that they should play well against. And they, for the most part, won against the teams that are either at their level or beneath them in the standings. And what I was interested in seeing was see how the Jets do against the more, what I call them, elite, whatever you call the top 10 teams in the league, the teams that are, other than the Jets, that are sitting in first and second place in their respective divisions across the league. And so we were seeing that for seeing their upcoming game against LA, and then at home to Colorado, and now the Bruins, and then they hosted Carolina before that. And so on. So they've done okay. Like, for the most part, they've held their own. I think I was reading something. I'm just having a look here too. I don't think the Jets have let the other team score more than 3 goals.
It's 21 games now.
It's like going back. Where was when
early November.
November the 2nd, they lost 5-2 to Vegas. And since that time, they have not allowed the opposition to score more than 3 goals. And in the games where they have lost, for the most part, it's been 3-2, 3-2, 1-3-0 loss to Florida. I mean, that was a win. But 3-2, 3-2, they lost 1-3-1, 2-0. Like, even the games where they lost, they were still in it because they were playing well defensively. So I have to give hats off to the Jets. I mean, they're playing that system. They're playing very effectively. They play it. I think they played even more effectively on the road because they don't have to impress the fans. I think sometimes you play at home and you want to do like a little bit of a show for the crowd, so you maybe forget, and the coaches have to remind you. But I've just been really impressed with their playing to structure and playing the right way. And in the case, they lost to Montreal 3-2, and we'll chat about these games a little bit more because I got some more comments to talk specifically about them. But they lost to Montreal 3-2 in overtime. Say, wow, Montreal's a sub 500 team. I think they were 13-2 when they came in to play the Jet. Okay, but Montreal played a similar style. It's that you got to be patient. It was a low-scoring game, 2-2 late in the in the third period. And then anything can happen, right? So it just happens, right? It's just kind of whatever. But overall, I've been really impressed with how the Jets have played, and they've had enough scoring, even with Kyle Connor not in the lineup, to to be in those games. How about for you?
It's interesting, right? Because we talked about a scenario that I'm really intrigued about is we've talked about how the Winnipeg Jets as a whole need to play a certain way to be consistently successful.
Yep.
And you and I have had a nauseating amount of conversations about for the Winnipeg Jets to have success, their game needs to look like this and look like that, and they need to do this. Well, I mean, to be honest with that, all come to fruition this year with a consistency level that has not been reached, arguably, maybe since we went to the conference final, even though I don't think that team was as defensively responsible as this one. I saw statistics that coming into yesterday, the Jets were in the top 3 for goals allowed at 5-on-5.
Yeah.
In the whole NHL, and I think that's something to be sort of commended. But yes, we've talked about it. This is the way they need to play to be successful, and it's interesting because I think a lot of what we said about their offensive ability or the ability, I guess, of the forwards. You have that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, which brings in Iafallo, Tapari, and then Gabriel Velarde, who's just on a heater on another level. But to me, Rhett, you're seeing the defensive responsibility of a player that we've harped on for years. His name is Mark Scheifele, actually playing a committed two-way game. And then the defense, because they're not having to overextend themselves, and I would say an above, would you qualify the Jets unit of 6 right now as average compared to the rest of the league, or where would you put that defensive unit?
Yeah, I would say they're for sure on paper playing above their pay grade. I would say that.
Okay, so we'll just say for the most part it's an average defensive unit.
Yes.
Being helped out by this superb team defense has made this defense sort of elevate the levels that we haven't seen.
Yep.
So
we talked about this over and over again.
It's interesting that you remove Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's interesting that you remove Blake Wheeler. It's interesting that you bring this injection of new forwards, maybe even as far as Nino Niederreiter and Vladislav Namestnikov from last year's deadline, and you immediately get a team that cares about, the defensive side of the game as well as scoring goals. And the results have bore a lot more fruit than, rotten eggs, for lack of a better term, this year, particularly of late. And voila, it's like the culture flipped overnight. Now, keeping in mind, I'm not blaming Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler for past situations, but I just think it's really, really interesting. And I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade has paved the way for this sort of culture shift / focus the team defense, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's very unique and interesting to see because they come from that Todd McCullough defensive first mentality. And now we're seeing Gabriel Velarde be on the heater of his career, basically. And Mark Scheifele be so defensively responsible that it's almost like bringing in those guys have kind of brought some other guys to be like, okay, this is the way we need to play. And I'm waiting for that breaking point, so to say, that, the last 2 years things have kind of fallen apart around this time. I'm not seeing any of that, but would suggest there's a second half swoon coming to the nature of what we've seen in the last 2 years. And, I can finally sit here on this show and have great difficulty, other than the special teams, picking apart a problem for this hockey team. It's just nice to see.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, the Jets are one of the best teams in the league 5-on-5, and that's the most hockey is played 5-on-5. So if you're playing really well, you're one of the best teams in the league at 5-on-5 with all the different numbers for Corsi and the different ways that they evaluate it. You're going to win a lot of games, and that's what the Jets are doing. That's number one. Number two, I agree with you. They're a defense first team, or they're a system team. And the way they played before is they put too much pressure on Hellebuck and too much pressure on the defense. Now they play more as a unit in their own end. They come out together. The forwards don't leave the zone too early. They support the defense and the goalies. It means less pressure on Hellebuck. I think Brossoit is playing more, which is good. I think Hellebuck is fresher because he's missing, or he's not having to face as many shots. The defense is not being strained because they have the forwards supporting them as they bring the puck out of their own end, and they try to do it really quickly and support each other. So there's lots of things that the Jets are doing really well that make them a very good defensive team. And I agree with you. I think I'm not going to blame Wheeler and I'm not going to blame Dubois, but the Jets needed to change their locker room. They needed to change their culture, and it was moving out some people. It also was changing their leadership core and who's the main voice they're listening to. And before it was always Wheeler and Scheifele, Wheeler and Scheifele, Wheeler and Scheifele, and maybe Dubois was in there too. And now it's Lowry with second banana Morrissey, and I think even to a lesser extent, Scheifele. And I think Scheifele's either going to step in line with everybody else, and he signed that big contract. He's either going to step in line or he's going to get shipped out. And he's stepped in line, and this is Adam Lowry's team. And you could say, yeah, okay, Mark Lowry's leading, or Mark Scheifele's leading the way, blah, blah, blah. This is Adam Lowry's team. They play like Adam Lowry plays. They don't cheat.
Fair enough.
They play honest. They play tough. They don't play dirty. They play tough. And more often than not, they have success. But I agree with you. The penalty kill is still not good enough. It stinks, actually. Their penalty kill stinks.
That's
and
the
the power play is almost non-existent. So it's like,
I mean, think about how good you would be as a team if your special teams was acceptable.
Just a few points better. Like even if they're like penalty,
Look, middle of the pack power play, middle of the pack penalty kill. Look at how good this team would be.
I think they're 28th in penalty killing and 24th in power play. If they were in the middle 10, like if they were 15 to 20 in that range as a team ranking in both penalty kill and power play, they could go 9-0, 10-0. Because that's the difference between a goal here or there in a game. That's the difference between winning and losing. So
interesting little discussion here that I would like to have, Rich, and that is on the resurgence / turnaround of Laurent Brossoit after the first 3 games. Boy, has he been a good solution to a backup scenario the last 3 or 4 times that he's played.
Yeah, he didn't have to be a superstar against Detroit. There was one save with his left pad on a rebound he made on Larkin. I mean, that's a goal. 9 out of 10 goalies don't slide over in time, or Larkin's able to get it a little bit higher and he slides it over or shoots it over the pad. But Brossoit not only gets the pad over, but he pushes the pad towards Larkin so that the angle that Larkin has to shoot the puck is affected by his ability to score. And yeah, that held the game where it was for the Jets. And yeah, so he's played
I
really
think, to be honest, with the last game that a Jets goaltender legitimately had to steal was the Carolina game here.
Yeah.
Realistically, with Laurent Brossoit.
Oh yeah, they won that one only by a goal, right?
Yeah, and then Brossoit made 42 saves.
Yeah.
But the days of Hellebuyck needing to stop 40-something, once a week are extremely limited. And the number of 10 bell saves that he's had to make in the last, he's had to steal at least a game a week in the past. Which is very, very interesting, which I think, to me, is going to make tonight's game all the more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Is, okay, we've seen what you can do against Colorado times 2. We've seen what you can do against LA down 2-0, and you come back. That's, to me, and I hate to sound like a hot shot, but the Jets playing the way they play now, I give them a chance against pretty much anybody in the entire National Hockey League.
Okay, but with the Bruins, don't take penalties. Their power play is very good. Don't take penalties.
Yep, and they didn't. They had the 2 penalties against Detroit. They didn't have a power play, which I found very interesting.
Okay, let's talk about this. Good. That's a very good segue. Can we talk a little bit now about the penalties and the penalty killing and power play?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, I just want to say, and if you're a ref, I apologize in advance. And if you ref in the NHL and you happen to be listening to the show, or you're a linesman or linesman, but a ref, I'm apologizing in advance. The garbage that I have seen reffing over the last 3 games. And what's interesting, the Jets in those 3 games are 2-0-1. They've got 5 out of 6 points, despite the fact that the reffing is garbage. So I want to give some examples. I was at the game on Saturday. Was it evening or afternoon? Was it evening? Yeah.
Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado. 6-2 they won. The Jets outplayed Colorado badly. I don't know if you watched that game on TV. It was a Hockey Night in Canada.
I saw the highlights. I was working.
It was a Hockey Night in Canada game. It was one of the games being shown nationally on one of the Sportsnet channels.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets outplayed the Avalanche in the first period. They're up 2-0. And my problem with the reffing is it's this thing, it's a disease, and they can deny it all they want. Like, you can get a table in a restaurant and ask him, and he'll deny it. But you put the truth serum in him, or you put him on a plank standing above a tank of sharks swimming around underneath him, and then he's going to tell you a different story. They think differently when a team is up. It's almost like, and folks are going to listen to this and say, yeah, Rick, you're right. A team goes up 2-0, and it could be the Jets. It could be who they're playing against. It really doesn't matter. It could have been Colorado up 2-0. Could have been the Jets up 2-0. The reason the Jets are up 2-0 against Colorado is because they're all playing Colorado. Colorado didn't deserve to be in the game. They don't need an olive branch. They don't need help. They don't need another dude on the ice. Play better. Play harder. Overcome what the Jets are doing to you. But what the refs do is they look at that and they say, oh, we can't call a penalty against Colorado and give the Jets the chance to go up 3-0. But at the same time, we're going to look for any chintzy little thing that the Jets do, and we're going to call it a penalty right away. There was an interference call. Nick Ehlers in the second period was skating the puck. He pushed the puck by Manson, and Manson gave him the one shove. You're allowed the one shove, but then Ehlers was going by him. He gave him 2 shoves. Then he pushes Ehlers to the ground. The puck is already behind the net. The whole rink. I mean, there was a grandmother 5 seats down from me who doesn't know hockey. Well, maybe she does because she was booing too, but she booed louder than anybody in our section. It was awful. And if you were watching it at home, no matter what you say, What is that? What is that guy doing? He doesn't have the puck. How can he be hitting that guy and running him off the puck like that? In open ice, it wasn't even on the boards. We kind of do a little pinch and then you let the guy through. This was 2, 3, 4, boom, and then hit him on the ice. The whole place went nuts. Ref, you suck. Ref, you suck. Went crazy. And then 3 minutes later, the Jets get called for some little ticky-tack hooking penalty. Now, it was a hooking penalty, borderline. But it's in the neutral zone. It wasn't a guy going in on a breakaway that had a chance to score. Yeah. So this is my point, is that teams go up 2-0 because they're better than the other team that night, and the refs want to make it even. They want to, we can't possibly call another penalty. Yes, if they're playing crappy and they have to hook the Jets, otherwise the Jets go up 3-0 with the play that they're playing, then you should give the Avalanche another penalty. So that's number one. Bad. Refs, bad. Then, okay, now this is really bad. On Monday night with the Habs, that was awful.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
In the same game, grabbing a puck and throwing it. Ehlers got called for that. I don't know if that was the game. I'm not sure if it was the game as Colorado. It might have been the game before. Might have been the game at LA maybe, where he grabbed the puck, grabbed it, and then kind of threw it between his legs. Legitimate penalty. I think that was against Colorado. But anyway, it's a legitimate penalty. I get it. They're going on and on about Josh Anderson, about, he's come out of his shell and scoring shell, blah, blah. He grabbed that puck, threw it to his stick. He didn't just knock it down. He grabbed it, threw it to his stick, give a little push, it banged around, and then went to the other guy for a goal. That should have been stopped. It should have been called dead.
Here's my problem with that. Just as a fact of the matter, the officials called it a goal on the ice. So the video has to be inconclusively overwhelming, but that's a hand pass.
Okay, I don't care about the rules. It's garbage. Whatever the rule they used, they should have called it right. You got 4 sets of eyes on the ice. 4 sets of eyes. 8 eyeballs. Yeah. 1 eyeball out of 8 can see that guy grabbed that puck and threw it to his own stick. And then what was even worse, they scored on that power play. And then they challenge it. They get reversed. They get another power play. They don't score it. Later on in the game, it was along the Jet bench. Another Hab grabs the puck, grabs it. It's floating in the air. He grabs it, brings it down, puts it onto his stick. They don't call it. And all the Jets are going like this. Nothing. The refs are 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice. It's just, so that's number 2. Then last night, or was it last night? No, the night before against Detroit. Again, Jets go up 2-0. Jets deserve to be up 2-0. Detroit is not in the game, and all the refs are looking to do is find a way to give Detroit a penalty or a power play and call a penalty against the Jets and not call anything against Detroit. They missed a couple of calls, and then I don't know if you saw this, that there was no penalty. In fact, John Garrett said, "Hey, have you ever been to a game, or have you ever called a game?"
Yeah, I heard penalty?
That. And it was, I think it was.
I was in the third period when there was no penalties yet.
Yeah, it was about like 5 minutes into the third period, 6 minutes. It was about a third of the way into the third period. Then literally a minute later, Niederreiter comes down with 1 hand on his stick, not 2, 1. And a guy's skating around and he goes and hits the guy, not in his hands, on his stick blade.
Yep.
And they call that slashing. And John Garrett, they show the replay, and Garrett was looking at it and goes, "Oh, is that it? Oh,
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure about that. He doesn't want to say something and say that's garbage, because then he could get a phone call from John Daly or Gary Bettman. But that was awful, absolutely awful. It's sickening, and I think it's a disease. I think the refs, and I think they could have even been told by the head of the refereeing, is you always want to even Steven. And that's the problem I have with today's refs and refs in general. Do not put yourself into the game. If you're not calling a penalty for the first 2.5 periods of a game, and the game is played really well, let the teams decide. Don't stick your nose into the game and call it stupid penalty.
I think the infuriating part is once we get to.
But just let me finish. But my point is, if that guy from Detroit was going in on a breakaway and Niederreiter came in and cracked him on the stick and exploded his stick and he couldn't score, call a penalty for sure. But this is in the neutral zone or in front of, like along the blue line. The guy's skating around and Niederreiter goes with one hand like this on a stick. He doesn't even lose the puck, and they call that a slashing penalty. That's a joke. If you call that a penalty, then there's going to be guys in the penalty box from minute 0 to minute 60 for the whole game. All night long. The whole game will just be power plays. You're going to call that? If that's the standard, it's a joke. So refs, smarten up. Call the game, stick your nose out of the game, only put your nose into it when it has to do with a scoring chance or something legitimate. Don't stick your nose in with some cheap slashing call in the neutral zone with a nothing play because one team's down 2-0 and you want to get them back into the game and give them a chance to make it exciting. Stay out of the game. Let the players decide. That's what bothers me. The refs are deciding. Anyway, I'm done my rant. We're bring back Rick's rant.
It's interesting, Rick, because I was just going to add on and say, in the third week of April, when we start the Stanley Cup playoffs, it seems like the rule book changes again. But anyway, that's...
I know. But my point is, if you're like, it's all... If you're not going to call that a penalty in the first period and the second period, and now one team is up 2-0 or 3-0, and now you decide to call that against the team that's up 3-0 to give the other team a chance to get back in the game, first of all, you're injecting yourself into the game. You're putting yourself in. You're almost playing favorites, number 2, and you're not being consistent, number 3, because you haven't called that same thing throughout the whole game. That's my point. It just rubs me the wrong way. And it would be the same way I would be just as sickened by it if the Jets were down 3-0 to Detroit and they're trying to give the Jets a chance. If the Jets are being outplayed and outworked, they should fight their way back in, and they should draw a penalty from a guy going to the net and having a scoring chance and getting hooked, not some little one-handed slash at the blue line, which is a nothing play and has nothing to do with a scoring chance. It bothers me. It's what makes the game not as great. That game with Detroit and Winnipeg would have been a great game if no penalties had been called. Oh, and I forgot to tell you that Habs game too. That other thing was that they called like that really cheap penalty on Ehlers. Now, okay, it was a trip, okay, but that was interference. It's like 3 minutes left or like a minute left in the game, whatever. The guy runs Ehlers into the boards. He doesn't have the puck, and he can't get out to the point to block the shot, so he has to dive, and then the guy falls over a stick. Again, garbage. That you're going to call that penalty with 30 seconds left. If you're going to do that, you should call them both, send them both off. Again, the refs injecting themselves. A game is 2-2 with a minute left, and you stick your nose into the game, and it impacts the final outcome of the game. That bothers me. It bothers me. It should bother every hockey fan. And I'm not talking about a scoring chance. Call them on scoring chance. There was no scoring chance there. It was interference. And if you're going to call the penalty there for the trip, you better be calling the interference before that. They always go back in time 5 or 10 seconds. They do it for everything else. They can do it for this too. Anyway, I'm done. That's Rick's rant. I'm glad I got it off my chest. I'm going to have a fantastic weekend and a Christmas and Happy New Year because I was able to let people know how upset I am about NHL reffing. But hey, that's my thing.
We had another coach fired in the NHL since we last had a show. Craig Berube, who moved in St. Louis. Jeff Bannister, now the interim coach there. What do you make of this? To me, every coach had an expiry date, and it was just Craig Berube running out of sort of an expiration, if you will. The other argument I have is if the guy lets Craig Berube type players leave, I'm not sure you're going to get a style of game that reflects on Craig Berube that much.
Yep. No, you're right.
I understand hockey is a what have you done for me lately business, but at some point it just feels like the general manager has to wash his hands of the real problem. And getting rid of the coach just seems like a quick up and out problem. Like, example, I think everybody that has been fired in the National Hockey League this year, and there's been a lot of coach firings, you could directly point the blame at those general managers for at least being somewhat responsible for the team not performing.
Or not reloading the gun, so to speak, for the coach to be able to fire it.
Correct. It's almost like they leave the coach on its own island to say, you know what, you're going to do this yourself. And the coaches are going to be saying, well, I have what you gave me to work with. And that's where I feel this Craig Berube firing kind of lies for me. I don't like it. I think it's Doug Armstrong ignoring the real problem on the team, that the Blues really haven't been the same since Alex Pietrangelo and those type of players left in free agency. However, it was their prerogative not to give out big expensive deals to older players.
Yeah, like Ryan O'Reilly too.
But at some point, you reap what you sow, and yeah, life is not fair. But I don't know what you could have possibly wanted out of Craig Berube when you give him what you gave him, and you say, "Here you go, make something work."
Well, and I agree, and I think it's, you know what, it's you. I don't know if you're going to blame Doug Armstrong. I just think it's just like you say, they're hired to be fired, but um, that team hasn't been the same since they won the cup. You're right; they've lost so many players. I mean, go to Torrey Krug, Ryan O'Reilly, Alex Pietrangelo. There's another defenseman that went to that went to Vegas.
Hulk.
Oh, they lost Falk to Carolina or whatever. Yes.
Yeah.
They lost, and then like they lost a lot of players, a lot of quality guys.
They're not even a shell of what they were when they were good.
David Perron was in his prime. He was a great second line scorer and it was always productive. I'm just saying they lost a lot of good quality. Oh, also Pat Maroon in his prime. Like there were a lot of guys that were good quality, sort of those guys like you need on your third and fourth line, and then your scorers. And they had good puck movers. Their netminder was playing out of his mind at the time. They're bidding him. But I'm just saying there's sort of a life expectancy for your team and for your roster. So now, are you going to blame the general manager? Maybe the general manager can't really. You can't, you sign those guys, you get them. You can't just throw away 8 guys or 10 guys and bring in 10 new guys. You have to deal with their contracts. You got to find other people to remove those contracts from you.
Yeah.
If you don't want them, then you got to incentivize with all sorts of draft picks or prospects, which you don't want to do because you're trying to retool at the same time as you're still trying to be competitive. So it's just a natural course. It's very hard for a team in this day and age to stay really good for an extended long period of time. The only way it can be done is you have to draft and develop really well. You have to hang on to your core players for as long as you can for a while. And you have to play not by talent, but by team structure. That's why teams like the Lightning and the Bruins tend to do really well year after year after year because they have talented players, but they have a system and they plug guys in. You lose Krejci and Bergeron, and you bring in Geeky, right? You bring in other guys, and they just seem to fit the mold, and away they go, and they just become part of the system and part of the process. And that's where a system team is really good. So that's why, maybe long term, to answer your question too, that's why I like what the Jets are doing, because this structure, I think, is going to stay around for a while. Because Rick Bowness, my prediction is, I don't know if he's going to be here a year, 2, 3 years, whatever it is, 3-4 years. When he's done, he's just going to resign, and Scott Arniel is going to take over, and he's just going to continue, I believe, this whole team philosophy of how they're playing. And as they bring in new players and younger players to come in, it's the team is not going to be affected because they've got a system that they play. They have an identity. They have a team identity, and they play it well. And so that's why I really like it. But for Craig Berube, it's bad. But you know what? He'll find a place to coach. He's a good coach, Craig. I mean, you don't win a Stanley Cup with being a bad coach. And the other interesting thing is his players really liked him. They didn't, they just whatever. It's like Maurice. Now, Paul Maurice didn't come out and say they're not listening to me, they're not responding to my rhetoric or my yelling or my quiet talk or whatever. But there comes a time, a guy talks 7, 8, 9 years. It's the same voice, the same thing. Maybe you get too comfortable. I don't know. I've never been a pro athlete. I've never been in a dressing room like that. I don't know. For me, it's not a problem. But I can't relate because I'm not a pro athlete. But I just think it gets to a point where it's not anybody's fault. I wouldn't even say it's anybody's fault. It's
Yeah.
not like the players walked out on him. It's not like the players gave up on him. They felt bad. But I don't know what it is. It's drive. It's this. It's that. It's the mix of players. It's the system. It's everything. And you got to win. In the NHL, some teams are winning and some teams are losing. And the teams that are losing, unless it's a brand new coach or they're in that mode like the Jets were with Maurice at the beginning, where they said we're gonna develop the young guys, and if we lose for short term because we want to develop the players. Other than that, if you're a losing team, you're gonna fire your coach. That's what general managers are gonna do, or they're gonna fire themselves, but they're not gonna fire themselves. So that's what happens. So,
other thing I wanted to touch on quickly, Vancouver hasn't fallen off at all. In
I
fact,
can't figure that team out.
Today they're tied for first in the Pacific with the Vegas Golden Knights. If we would have picked up another point against Dallas and not lost in overtime, they would be in first. How does this team keep doing it?
I don't know. I don't know how they do it. I don't. I just think in a lot of ways they are. I have to give, again, a lot of credit to the players, but even more credit to the coaching staff led by Rick Tocchet. I think similar to the Jets, they know who they are. They have an identity. The Jets is kind of a defense first, a lot of forechecking, supporting the defense and the goalie, moving out as a team, putting a lot of pressure on the puck, and with speed and with size too. When the Lowry line is on and so on. So that's sort of the Jets' identity. With Vancouver, it's all about speed. That is a fast team. They do everything fast. They check fast. They forecheck fast. They skate fast. They go offensively fast. They turn over the puck fast. They put pressure on the puck. They're fast. They make fast decisions with everything. They're in and out of their zone really quick. Boom, boom. They don't log around it. Even on the power play, suck, 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 suck. They're moving the puck fast. They're a fast team. That's their identity, and that's how they play. And you got to give them credit because they got some very fast players there, and players that had really off years last year have really come back, like Peterson, Höglander, Hughes had kind of an off year last year. Miller was okay, but he wasn't spectacular like he is now. I mean, but just some guys, they just had like off years last year, and this year, for whatever reason, they're just It's and I can't figure them out. Other than that, that I say that they're just in their system, and they believe in each other, and they believe in their goalie, and they're very good on the power play. They kill penalties very well. They're in the middle third in killing penalties, I think, in the top third in the power play, and they're fairly good at 5-on-5, and they score a lot of goals. They score enough goals to win most games, and they have a great goalie. So.
Other team I wanted to talk about as we kind of hit the holiday break is the. Sorry, here I'm just looking it up to make sure I don't have it backwards. Is the New Jersey Devils. This to me was a playoff team. They performed really well. Yes, last year, pardon me. This year they're sitting sixth in the Metropolitan Division, a record of 16, 13, and 2. This to me is the surprise, along with the rest, sort of the bottom part of the Atlantic, if you will. What's gone kind of wrong in New Jersey in your mind?
Well, they did lose Hamilton for a while. They've lost him. He's been injured.
Yep.
He's the quarterback of their power play. And then they lost. Didn't they lose both Hischier and Hughes for a while? They lost them both.
Yeah, they lost them both for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're the drivers on that team, right? But yeah, they're. I think they're still. Are they in a playoff position right now in New Jersey, or are they just on the outside? I think they're just outside, right? I think they're just outside the bubble.
They are 4 back of the playoffs.
Okay. Yeah. But that can be made up. If they get healthy, they could win. Like, I could see them, if they have their full lineup, they could win in 9 or 10 games in a row.
The other surprise to me, Rhett, is the Washington Capitals. They're 17-9-4. But the game within the game kind of statistic that gets my attention. Alex Ovechkin only had his 6th goal of the season yesterday.
Yep.
And yet they still keep on winning.
Yep.
They have a new coach there in Spencer Carberry, who was with the Leafs last year. Is Ovechkin the byproduct of this sort of new system not really benefiting him? It seems to me like Washington plays an overly defensive system and really sort of eliminates goals against, but also it brings their goals for down. Is Ovechkin hurt by the byproduct of the way this capital system is currently set up?
Well, you could say that you could argue that for sure. But then what about in the power play? He's playing in the first power play, and he's got that cannon for a shot.
There's that argument again, right?
Like, he scored a lot of his goals, probably almost half in the last few years have been on the power play or empty netters. So I'm just saying, like, I
read a statistic that even 2 or 3 of those 6 goals now are empty netters. So it's actually only 3 goals with a goalie in the net.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, listen, father time. Okay. It's again, everyone is saying, oh, he's going to be able to, I don't think he's going to be able to catch Wayne Gretzky. I just don't. I just don't think so. I think his game, it caught up to Wheeler last year or even 2 years ago. And it's catching up with Ovechkin. The one guy that's really seemed to play through that so far anyway is Sidney Crosby. He's playing as good this year as he has in probably the last 5 years.
But the rest of his team hasn't.
I know.
Like, they're consistently inconsistent. If you take out, I don't want to say that the Penguins are what the Oilers are or have been for the last number of years, but it just strikes me as a team that outside of the top 4 players seems very slow, seems very I don't know how you define it. It just seems consistently inconsistent. And I wonder if the age is catching up with that group.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and they wanted to make it sort of one more kick at the cat, right? That's what Kyle Dubas was doing when he brought in Erik Karlsson, right? And so on. But yeah, I think that team, like, they're sort of, you could say, okay, they're going to get all geared up for the playoffs. But the point is, they got to get in the playoffs before they get a chance to make damage in the playoffs. And I don't know, are they in a playoff position right now? I think they might be just on the bubble too, or outside. So
not where I had them anyway.
No, I thought they would. I think you and I talked about this. I selected them to be in a wild card position in the East because I thought Karlsson injecting, they would get inspired and get one more kick at the cat. But I think part of it has been their defensive play and also their goaltending. It hasn't been consistent enough. Who do they have in net right now? Is it DeSantis? No, it's Jarry. Right?
Tristan Jarry.
Yeah.
And
that's
the one argument that I could make about Vancouver. They have Casey DeSmith, who they acquired from Montreal via Pittsburgh, and then now they have Thatcher Demko playing out of his mind too.
It's a DeSmith I'm thinking of. That's right. That's not DeSantis.
Yeah, so he's now in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Tristan Jarry, and I'm unfamiliar who the backup is in Pittsburgh.
But he just hasn't been good enough.
It's just interesting to me, right? How you try the same thing, expecting the same result every year, and you think you bring in that one piece that really pushes your team over the top, and it just hasn't materialized. But like, if I'm being completely upfront and completely honest, Pittsburgh is a team that, yes, looks loaded on paper based on past performance, if you will, but they're not exactly a team that strikes a lot of fear into me.
Not right now. Not
Not
currently.
as currently constructed.
Yeah. Yeah, you could argue that. Yeah.
And I just like, I'm wondering, once this Crosby, Malton, Letang, Carlson era ends, which I think is going to be sooner rather than later, but that's just me. It's going to be some long and hard years in Pittsburgh to get this thing back to respectability. Because I think if you don't have Sidney Crosby or if you don't have Evgeny Malkin, I think this team is in a rebuild already.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what happened when Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane took a step back. The Blackhawks said, "Thank you very much for your service, but we're moving on."
Yep. Well, and they moved out Duncan Keith the year before, and then Seabrook was already retired because of injury a year or two before that.
So there's already sort of difficult decisions that are being made, which is interesting. And again, Kyle Dubas must have done a good job of convincing management about the after Crosby era, because I think that's coming sooner. Maybe not necessarily the after Crosby era, but for sure with the other three, they ain't what they once were, I think would be fair to say. The other team that fired a coach quickly this week, maybe a surprise, may not be, but the coach that's in replacing the coach that was fired raised a few eyebrows, at least with me, because it brought me back to 2004 as a younger child. Out is DJ Smith in Ottawa. In comes Jacques Martin.
Yes. And Daniel Alfredson.
2004 in the battles of Ontario between the Leafs and the Senators, and Quinn against Jacques Martin. But boy, along with the Buffalo Sabres, the Ottawa Senators, to me, have been the most disappointing team.
Yeah, we expected them to be a playoff team this year. We thought they were going to take that next step, just like the Buffalo Sabres, and they didn't, and they haven't yet.
And I just wonder how much patience this new ownership is going to have.
Well,
for that.
I think he does, because he realizes all those draft picks, like it's going to come around. It's going to take the right coach, the right system, the right mix. I think the core is really good. It's the supporting cast, and it's the goaltending. They need more consistent goaltending. I think the supporting cast is what needs to be tweaked there. And Jacques Martin is not the is not the solution here. He's there on an interim basis, I think.
He's the guy that's kind of the band-aid to the actual solution.
Okay. So
other team has kind of surprised me at Christmas here, but just before we change things up.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia Flyers, they're sitting second in the Metropolitan at 39 points. Just as easily probably out of the playoffs given where they are. But for a rebuilding team, 18, 11, and 3 is pretty good.
Yes, and again, it's a team that plays a system. And you either play Tortorella's system or you don't. And in Tortorella's system, he's won a Stanley Cup with it. You got to have really good goaltending, and you got to have everybody buying in. And if everybody buys in and you can roll 4 lines and you get enough scoring here and there, you can win a lot of hockey games, even if you don't have superstars. And Philadelphia, you could argue, doesn't have many star players.
Not anymore. They cleaned them out to make room for this perceived rebuild.
Yeah. So,
which right now lands them a home ice in round 1 of the playoffs. Still a long way to go, but if things were to end today, that's where it happens. Quickly on the way out, Rich, I always ask how the Jets will do this next week. I'm going to change things up a little bit.
Okay.
In about a minute or less for each of these teams, I need you to play the role of Santa bringing Canadian teams Christmas presents. So I'm going to rattle off the list, and you're going to tell me what kind of Christmas present you would give these Canadian teams. And we'll start with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Consistency. If you could get a little bag of consistency,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like.
To me, I'm bringing the Toronto Maple Leafs goaltending. Ilya Samsonov is not the answer.
Yeah, well.
Not this year.
Yeah.
Ottawa.
Supporting players.
Fair enough. Montreal.
How about you? Okay. Montreal. Montreal. I would say a superstar defenseman. That's what they call him.
For me, it would be Steady Eddie. They're 3 back of a wild card spot. Nobody had them at that point this far into the season. Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal. Now we'll go out west. Vancouver. If you're Santa, what are you bringing the Canucks?
Well, Santa, I don't know what he's going to give them, but I would give them a lump of coal because I'm tired of them winning. And so I would give them a lump of coal. How about you?
Ooh. Interesting.
What would you give them?
I'd give them a defenseman to make a serious Stanley Cup run. They're playing like it right now, but they have to be able to withstand what's coming in the second half. Edmonton Oilers.
Understanding the definition of the word the defense. They need
Fair
understanding. Yeah, what they need is a dictionary with all the pages torn out except for the one that has the word defense on it. So
okay, let's go to Southern Alberta. And what do you bring in the Calgary Flames?
Calgary Flames need some contracts signed. That's what they need. Yeah. They need some UFAs to sign some contracts there.
Clarity, contract clarity, because apparently they're starting to blow that thing up. That is the talk of some of the insiders. So we'll see just how far that gets. And the last one, the local team, the Winnipeg Jets. I'll start with this one. I'm Santa Claus, and at the deadline, I bring the Winnipeg Jets a serviceable depth defenseman and a second-line center.
Wow. Okay.
And we are loading up for a chance at the Stanley Cup this year.
Okay. I wonder what you'd have to give up to get that, but okay. And for me, I would say good health, because I think if the Jets have good health and they stay healthy with their lineup as it was originally created at the beginning of the year, they have a very good chance. They don't have many holes in their team. So, okay, the Jets are playing the Bruins tonight. Then they have the Christmas break, and then they go back-to-back with Minnesota on the 30th and 31st, and then ring up the new year at home with the Lightning before heading out on the road.
I think we'll be back just before that Tampa game.
You think we're going to be back on Monday the 1st?
No, Tuesday the 2nd.
Okay. So you want to look at the next...
alert, I'm probably going to that Jet team on the 2nd, so we'll have to we'll work it out. So we'll throw the Tampa game in there for now.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the Jets are going to go 3-1-1 in their next 5.
Yeah, that's
No, you're going to go 2-2-1. You go 2-2-1. It's okay.
No, I see. The thing is, I'm not sure about tonight. The home and home with the Wild probably get split. The first game out of Christmas should be a win, but it won't be easy. 2-2-1 seems appropriate.
Okay, 2-2-1.
Or 1-1-2.
Okay, there you go.
1-1-2. All right. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll see everybody,
Merry Christmas.
I presume, around the 3rd of January.
Sounds good.
So we'll see you in the new year after the Jets play Tampa. I am so excited to be going to that game. That makes me really happy. Yeah, so for Rich Petty, this is Michael Dante, and have a great Christmas holiday season. Enjoy the World Juniors, too. We didn't talk much about that. But we'll probably be able to talk about the playoff round of the World Juniors the next time we come back. For Rich Petty, this is Mike Rodell saying have a great night. Good night from Winnipeg. We'll see you in the new year. Good night.